turn with me to the book of 2 Kings, if you would. The book of 2 Kings, and we're going to look at a mother who's now a widow, who just lost her husband. The family's in huge debt, and her sons are about to be sold off as slaves to pay back this debt. The book of 2 Kings, if you would turn to chapter 4, 2 Kings chapter 4, we'll be reading 1 through 7 in the NIV, the New International Version, that says this. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead. And you know that he revered the Lord, and now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves." Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? What do you have in your house?" She replied, "Your servant has nothing at all, just a little oil." Elisha said, "Go around to all your neighbors and ask for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Collect as many as you can. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each one is filled, put it to the side." So she left him, and afterwards shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring and kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another one." And he said, "There's not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing, and she went to the man of God and said, "I'm done." And he said, "Go, sell the oil, pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left." This mother has just lost her husband. This mother is now a widow. This mother is now in debt. And she's about to be losing her sons to slavery to pay back this debt. She has no job. She has no income. She has no livestock to sell off. She has no hope. But we see here that her husband knew and revered and feared the Lord, and so we can assume that she knew and loved and revered and feared the Lord herself. And so she calls out to Elisha. And we're going to look at 3 C's. And the first C that we see is this. She has a challenge in her life. The first C is a challenge. We all have challenges, and this lady specifically has a challenge. Her husband is dead. So the death of her husband is a challenge. Her man, her soulmate, her love is dead. And then we see that there's debt. We see that there's debt. And if you would flip back, which we're not going to, I'm just going to give you a brief overview. In the book of 1 Kings, chapter 18, how this family incurred this debt was this. Her husband's name was Obadiah. You might recognize that name. And Obadiah was a prophet, was a man who loved the Lord, revered the Lord, and feared the Lord. And there's this wicked queen Jezebel. And she's killing off the Lord's prophets. She's killing them off. And Obadiah finds 100 of them, and he gathers them around, and he takes them away in this hillside, and he finds 2 caves. And he puts 50 in one cave and 50 in another cave. And he gives them water and food and resources. He keeps them alive, and in doing so, he goes into debt. And so this family, now that he has passed away, Obadiah has passed away, owes his creditor, Obadiah's creditor, his bank, they owe this money. And so we see the debt, and here's the discouragement that this woman is facing, is this creditor is within his legal rights. This was custom, this was normal for the sons to be sold off as slaves to pay back the debt. If you would look back in Exodus, you would find out that this was normal, and they could be taken for up to 7 years. That's the maximum these sons could be taken into slavery, was 7 years. Do you think that brings the mother hope and courage? Yeah, I get to lose my husband and my sons for 7 years. This is a great day. She is discouraged. And I have a question this morning. What discouragements do you face in your life today, 2008? Finances. Finances are a huge issue in some families. And with the economy going the way it is, some people are finding finances a discouragement. Maybe you have a job or a career decision that you're going to be making here in the next week or day or two or whatever, and it's a huge discouragement to you because you don't know what to do. There's a doctor by the name of Gerald Clerwan, and he says this. He says, "Today's young women are more likely to become depressed than their mothers were, and at a younger age, because increased economic pressure, changing roles in the society, and an inability to meet their own expectations has skyrocketed this depression. And here's this mother who's just lost her husband and is about to lose her 2 boys for up to 7 years. She's got some discouragements in her life. Maybe you have a marital issue that's causing discouragement. Maybe your kids cause you discouragement. I sent my wife on an early Mother's Day weekend getaway to visit a good friend last weekend, and I had dad duty. And if you would zoom in here, I'm sure you'll see that I'm balding, and I'm graying because I had my kids for an extended period of time, just me and them. Whew, they cause stress, don't they? And my kids, I love my kids, but they just cause stress. And here's this mother about to lose her 2 boys. But there's something about mothers that they take it personally to see their kids succeed. They take it personally when their kids fail. They take it personally, and I give mothers credit. I was working out with a friend this week. We're listening to the radio, talking and working out in between there somewhere, but we were listening to the radio, and they were talking, and somebody has figured out what the average salary of a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home moms don't have a job. So if they were to be paid for what they did, this is the average salary. $170,000 is what the average stay-at-home mom should make in today's market, at an average of 96 hours a week plus overtime. They went on to say that the average mother who works outside of the home 40 plus hours, then comes home and does the motherly things, works an average of 40 hours plus a week, and should be paid anywhere between $70,000 and $72,000 for what they do. And I said to my friend that I was working out with, mothers are very highly underappreciated. They are underappreciated for all they do. So if you're a mother, I thank you for what you do. You're making a difference in the lives of your children and in the lives of this church. So here's this mother. She's lost her husband, in debt, discouraged with the way things are going, and she goes to Elisha, and I love verse 2. If I could have a favorite verse in this little passage, it would probably be verse 2, because Elisha says this: how can I help? What do you have? He's not telling her solutions right away. He's not rhyming off, well, go do this or go do that. Why don't you take up carpentry? Why not? Why don't you go lay bricks? That could bring in some money. He's not offering advice right away. And I think sometimes we do that. We hear a problem and we want to fix it. A problem comes our way and we want to fix it. Well, why don't you do this? When we don't know the whole circumstance, we don't know the whole background to the situation, and we want to offer advice and we want to fix it. Elisha just says, well, how can I help? What do you need me to do? What do you have? He's not jumping to conclusions. So we've seen the challenge. The death, the debt, and the discouragement. Let's look at just for a minute, the command. The second C is this, the command. I love this command because it's interesting. The command is to go and collect empty jars. Go and collect nothing. That's the command. Don't go to your neighbors and fundraise. Don't ask for money. Don't go and sell Joe Corby's pizza. Don't go and try and do anything but collect nothing. Collect empty. And I find that interesting. I try and, as I said to the youth group, every time I read a story, I try and put myself into the story. Imagine what the neighbors are thinking. They probably know her husband's dead. They probably know there was a little bit of debt. And here she is starting a hobby of collecting jars.